I'm Sharice Jackson Jordan. Some of you may know me from the Real Housewives of Potomac. But what you don't know about me is that for years, I've been wanting to do a podcast. And I'm so grateful to Angel Livas and the Alive Podcast Network for providing an opportunity for Black voices to be heard. So the next time you hear my voice, it'll be in the Champagne Room with Sharice.
Hey there, I'm Angel Livas, CEO and founder of the Alive Podcast Network. Why that expression? You're making me think you haven't heard of us. No worries. That's why we're here, to introduce you to the hidden gem to Black podcast audiences. Did you know that there's an entire market seeking content that reflects stories relevant to Black listeners? Yep, 75% of Black podcast listeners fall into that category, according to Edison Research. That's one of the main reasons the Alive Podcast Network was created, to be the go-to platform for Black creatives to share their stories and for listeners to easily locate content that's most important to them. From deeply rooted stigmas of Black hair to reminding others that you are more than a title, the Alive Podcast Network is the authentic home of Black voices. Voices like Grammy-nominated singer Tamar Braxton, who teaches us that we're all under construction, while Real Housewives of Potomac, Sharice Jackson Jordan, shares the bubbly side of life in the Champagne Room. The Alive Podcast Network provides a unique interactive experience that shifts the intimacy of podcasts to a communal engagement driven by culture, conversations, and sharing. This trifecta is what attracts subject matter experts to our platform and builds trust between our hosts and the community that is Alive. In an article about the Black Podcast Listeners Report 2.0, the senior researcher, Gabriel Soto, said something quite interesting. He said,
"The data depicts a clear and untapped craving for Black stories and perspectives in podcasting. And the benefits of these stories to advertisers are on full display when we consider the Black listeners' high level of engagement with advertising brands on shows with Black hosts."
How high are those levels of engagement? Well, 61% of Black weekly podcast listeners end up recommending a product to a friend or family member after hearing an ad on a podcast. And if that doesn't get you excited, 52% of Black weekly podcast listeners actually purchased a product or service.
Welcome to the Swell Suite. I am Sarita, one of the co-hosts of the Swell Suite and the podcast producer. The Swirl Suite is like a blend of wine education mixed in with talk at a hair salon. So we are your favorite cousins, your favorite aunties, giving you the real deal about wine. We interview everybody from chefs to sommeliers to winemakers to beverage directors. And we have a great time doing it with a lot of laughs.
As you can see, the topics that we cover are vast. And as long as the content falls within information, inspiration, or innovation, we want it on the Alive Podcast Network. And if you're thinking that we're agnostic to just all things Black, we're not. There's value and richness in learning from everyone.
I got up on stage and actually shared, the fact that I had started over twice. I didn't tell anybody. You don't talk about that. That's something shameful, that you've started over twice. But me sharing that story, I had so many women come when I came off the stage go, "Thank you. Thank you. You just released me from my own shame. You just released me that it was okay that I've started over twice, because look at me now." And so just through me slowly sharing my story in safer spaces in some places, that it released a lot of women from things they were going through because they identified with me and my story. And so really started back in March of 2020 of, wow, my story's powerful. And maybe I went through all these things so that I could help somebody else. I never really saw that before. And like a lot of us through all this, pandemic and being closed up at home and really sitting with ourselves, and started healing some things that we had through sharing it with other people. And that is that the power of our stories of, man, this is why I've gone through all these things. And I always would say, God, why? why am I going through this again? Now I see why.
Our host, Dr. Adrell Collins, also discusses more controversial issues like sex and sexuality in the hit show Sex and Color.
Sex and Color is a podcast that is all about sex, sexuality, and sexual wellness from a BIPOC perspective. And I feel like that is what makes the show great. And that's what makes the show unique, is that it normalizes the conversations about sex and sexuality and communities of color. Oftentimes, these conversations that I'm having with guests on my show are seen as taboo in communities of color. And so I like to think that having a show out like mine helps to start those conversations with people in those communities.
10, 15 years ago, like what would you have needed to show up as your authentic self and to feel safe enough to show up and be authentic?
I love that question, and I'm actually experiencing some chills because it's speaking a little bit to the inner child. I mean, just from a media perspective, I wish that I knew that bisexuality was valid and just normal. Maybe it's uncommon, but it's normal. I wish I could turn on the TV and see some guy confidently doing his thing.
Creating content that speaks honestly and authentically without a network's personal bias, that is our goal. We all have our own flavor, our own style, and preferences. And the Alive Podcast Network embraces individuality because those are the ingredients that brew organic success. According to a JP Morgan report, Black women own nearly 3 million businesses across the United States, making them the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs nationwide. However, about 61% of Black women self-fund their startups due to a lack of access to capital. This statistic is one of the reasons why Michelle started the podcast, WTF, Where is the Funding?
What I love about the WTF podcast is the entrepreneurship and fundraising stories, the impact they have on the listeners. I love that it centers the stories of resilience of Black women who, despite the biases of being female and Black in an inequitable funding ecosystem that forces them to work harder than everyone else to get funding to survive and thrive in business.
Pairing advertisements for podcasts for brands like M&T Bank has also seen success. We created ads around financial literacy, which aired throughout the month of April, which just so happens to be Financial Literacy Month, but we also converted those ads into podcast episodes that aired on our network. More Than a Title is one of our newest shows to join the Alive Podcast family. And let's just say this show is all about showing up and empowering the entrepreneurial spirit through rich storytelling.
Hey everybody, I'm Darren Thomas and I'm one half of the More Than a Title podcast. So I'm from the Bronx and I've been in sales and marketing for over 12 years and I wanted to create a platform that highlights professionals and give them an opportunity to tell their real stories. Because at the end of the day, we're all more than a title, we're all more than what our company says we are, and it's our experiences which makes us who we are. It's those stories that hold the true value and those lessons that are truly powerful. So come check us out on the Live Podcast for season 3 with some real conversations with some of the best and brightest in the business. See you there.
Now, we recently launched something really special. It's our Alive Junior channel that's created just for young creatives to talk about topics most important to them.
I remember hearing intersectionality for the first time, I think, in high school, but I didn't realize the concept of it I had already thought about and experienced before, way before I yeah. And I think that's the case for most things that I learn about in school, because yeah, I don't know, most things I learn through personal experience rather than textbook. But when I think of intersectionality, I think about your multiple identities that relate to society, whether that be your race, your class, your gender, your sexual orientation, legal status, all of those things factor into how you navigate the world. And yeah.
If you're looking to connect with Black audiences to drive brand awareness, product engagement, or even product sales, The Alive Podcast Network is the home of Black voices, where community, culture, and creatives live. And you should too. Join us on our journey to becoming a household name for Black podcasts.